A lifetime of built-up resentment and rivalry between two aging sisters, both former actresses, is set off when one of them decides to sell the house they both live in, sending her mentally unbalanced sibling into ever more drastic acts of desperation and abuse. In the 1962 psychological horror film, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? And that's the movie we're dusting off this week on Movie Bones.
Now, Janie, don't act up, sweetheart. You've got to take your nap. You know that.
No, I don't know, and I'm not going to.
Now, Janie, you don't want all these nice friends of yours out here to think that you're a bad little girl now, do you?
I don't care. I want an ice cream.
Now, Janie, I told you.
I want it. I make the money so I can have what I want.
You're the lucky one, Blanche. Really, you are. Someday it's going to be you that's getting all the attention. And when that happens, I want you to try to be kinder to Jane and your father than they are to you now. I hope you'll try and remember that.
I won't forget. You bet I won't forget.
So those are the child versions of Baby Jane Hudson and Blanche Hudson, sisters, played as older adults, by Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, respectively. And this is Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, or as I like to call it, what happens if you put Stephen King's Misery and Billy Wilder's Sunset Boulevard into a blender and hit frappe. Have you seen Misery, Ryan?
Yeah, I've seen Misery. It's been quite a while, but I've seen it.
It's a good movie, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Watched it for the whole thing all the way through for the first time, and this is past year. In terms of Stephen King movies, it's up there as one of my favorites. So
yeah, I understand that.
The potential of putting those ideas together, like a mashup of the ideas between Misery and Sunset Boulevard, and you put it together and you kind of get this concept between these two sister actresses. And I think it mostly kind of works. I think I would say question mark?
I agree with you. I'm trying to compose why I agree with you in what you're saying. One of the scenes in Sunset Boulevard where you have, Norma Desmond's character who is going to the movie set and people remember her at the movie set.
Yes. Yeah.
There, and it's one of those situations, like nobody remembers Jane's character at all. And the only person that really does remember who she is the neighbor next door. And she doesn't even really remember. She just knows...
she knows Blanche.
Yeah, she knows Blanche. And she watches Blanche's movies. But it's just like, it would have been nice if maybe, like, someone that she came across truly knew who she was.
I think as part of her character, at least that part of it, I understand kind of from a writing perspective. In this case, it's like, I can see the temptation as a writer to say, and it's not a bad thing. It's like to say that here's a girl who's clearly spoiled from the beginning. Say we keep that, the beginning is something that's taken for granted, right? She's just spoiled, very selfish, very self-centered little girl. And that pretty much you can intuit, especially because they give you little crumb trails along the way to tell you that she's never been anything but that, But it was all that and nothing else. It's like she didn't have what I would call like an adult ability to act. It's more like just a child's ability to be cute. And if anything, you could even see a parallel to that in like a lot of child actors who had one big role as a kid. And how many stories have you heard about that? We both have heard of like, I think Ricky Schroeder or Jake Lloyd from Star Wars, right? What is he?
Yeah.
He played Anakin
kid.
once. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have you have all the Disney Channel people, and like, you might not know who Disney Channel people are, but there's kind of a famous thing about kids from Disney Channel going, wild after the Disney Channel. That's a big part of this movie. I think I wish we could have explored more of that in this movie. Now, that would make it to where we're probably having teenage versions of Jane and Blanche. Blanche? Yeah.
Yeah,
and
Blanche.
then, more of their childhood versions of themselves and more interactions with her parents. I understand why they didn't do that. You want to get to that point where you're having Joan Crawford and Bette Davis on the screen. I fully understand that. And the movie's, it's a little over 2 hours in and of itself. But, it's one of those things where it's like, you kind of want more. Like, you want to see other than just like little clips. And there were just clips to begin with of like who these people are, because you really only have one clip of like when Blanche is a kid of her being angry, and you could just chalk it up to, that was childhood anger and she's getting treated like crap. And I know why they did what they did when like they did their younger years. They actually just showed footage of Joan Crawford's and Bette Davis's movies, which I thought that was really neat. I thought that was a really good artistic choice. You just want more. You want a little bit more. And you want to get that build up so that you can maybe see why Jane is the way that she is. Because it's not just her sister. That's the thing. Like, she has real issues that are just beyond her sister.
I think you could go two ways. You could have said either less is more or more is better. If you do more, you kind of make it a slightly different story because you have less time for the horror, right? If you do it the other way, which is kind of the way I was leaning, is like, because I saw some of those early scenes and I'm looking at the dialogue. I was kind of detached from it in the way, especially with the movie producer, director, or whatever that was in the screening room, talking about Jane's roles that her sister had to help get because no one would hire her otherwise. It's like hearing them talk about her that way and in a very detached kind of way. It felt almost like a kind of info drop instead of, a natural conversation. It was kind of like halfway there, but not all the way there. And it was kind of distracting. That part of it, I thought could have been shortened, considerably. There's a lot of the stuff that they talk about too that could have been, introduced in dialogue other ways a little bit throughout the story. So if you just focus on their dialogue and kind of weave in some of that information in there, it's like that would be more than enough. It's just not a good choice in my opinion. The other end of the stick is the ending. And I can't avoid talking about spoilers here, folks, but there's a twist at the end of this, and I just didn't see the need for it, actually. Did you?
One of the issues there that I have with the twist is what the movie does. What the movie does is it paints this picture. Was there any moment before this twist that you felt like Blanche's character was selfish or bad in her own way?
Only in the opening, and it wasn't even selfish. It was more like the childlike kind of resentment that you get from the kind of treatment she was receiving. And it wasn't what I would call selfish.
That's one of the things this twist does is that it shifts the light of, like, it shifts it to everything's morally gray. I'm okay with morally gray movies. But
we both enjoyed those kind of movies, yeah.
Yeah. It bothered me because of that. Not everyone's perfect. Like, I knew not everyone was perfect. That's fine. But you didn't even hint at a difference between the two characters at all. You kind of kept them on the same route. Jane was being awful throughout the whole entire movie to her sister. And, the only thing that you could say about Blanche's character is that she was respectful to everybody. She kept making excuses. I mean, you could maybe hint at it with it, but like she's like, oh, she's fine, but like, she's clearly being abused.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like I can almost see the writers having written themselves that Blanche is almost kind of suspiciously deferential. Why would you be that way, kind of a thing, and then having to explain it with the twist. But at the same time, it's like to have the way the twist came out and then to have Blanche say it's her fault that Jane turned out that way. She said that.
Yeah, and it's not. That's the thing. She was already doing the things that she was doing. The only thing that would have been different is maybe if she wasn't in a wheelchair, she could have had more control over Blanche's life. I mean, Jane's life, like, been more of her keeper.
Yeah.
Jane is forced to take care of her. But, I mean, like, and that too is like, oh, it's actually my fault to do this. Do you know what doesn't happen at all during this movie? There was a moment where she even expressed a tiny bit of remorse for the predicament that Blanche was in. And it's like, it would have been nice, especially like in a drunken state, if she maybe did say something like, I know it's my fault that we're in this position. Like, that would have been nice. Like, especially there at the end.
Yeah.
But she's not. All she's trying to do is she's trying to keep herself out of trouble.
And that's it. Anytime she's nice to Blanche, it's because she needs something from her. She needs her to, even though she's clearly helpless to do anything about it.
Well, and then, like, she almost immediately becomes mean again.
Yeah. And even you think at the beach when Blanche kind of confesses, in quotes, what she had to say, it's like she seems all nice but then she gets distracted with the ice cream cones by the attention the crowd's giving her.
She goes into See, here's the thing with that. She definitely goes into psychosis there. And and I understand the reason behind the psychosis. That confession was the reason behind the psychosis, but she reverts back to a childlike state. And I thought that was really neat. I like that part, but how we got to that part, I wasn't really a fan. I think there's different ways to do that. Again, maybe there was no confession and she just straight up killed Blanche.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that too. I was expecting a much more clean-cut ending,
Yeah.
This doesn't feel like the film where you have a moral gray area. Not when you set up the characters the way you have in this movie. Jane is absolutely brutal. She was going to starve her sister to death and, just try and sweep it under the rug. There's nothing Blanche had ever done. Even if you give her a moment of rage against her sister, which, by the way, I don't know how the person behind the steering wheel can break their back. I could see how someone who's smashed between the gates in the car could break their back. But I just don't know how hitting the gates from that short of a distance, you know what I'm saying? How did that break her back? Some people, they say, have a glass jaw, so she have a glass back or something.
No, I absolutely understand. We get a monster thrown into our face for a better part of 2 hours. In those last 10, 15 minutes, you're like, okay, this is why she sort of is the way that she is. It's not the whole way she is the way she is. If you had shown us all throughout life, Blanche was being kind of like the little backstabbing monster to Jane. I understand that, but that doesn't happen. Now, it's just...
Or show them having a rivalry. I mean, that's where you could use more scenes in the beginning, right? You show them having some more equal footing on the bitterness scale. Even if Jane is the one who goes completely overboard and the other one still manages to hold on to her sanity, I have to say, I did feel something for Jane in terms of the most basic kind of pity in the way that someone who has frittered away all the goodness that's in them, that they're meant for.
Yeah.
And it's I can have pity for that. It's not sympathy. It's very hard to kind of have empathy for her, but it is easier to see the pity. I will say this, Bette Davis, she just did a really great job in her role here. She's one of my favorite actual performances in the film.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because she's really good at just turning it on and off.
She is. And
in some circumstances you're going, maybe she's not being nice.
No. She does add some nice subtleties to Jane. Even within the performance of, is she crazy or is she cognizant and malicious? It's both. At different times. And she tweaks the dial back and forth very gradually and very, very subtly. I think it's a very nice and subtle performance by her. It was her decision, apparently, also to cake the makeup on her face the way she did. She thought that Jane she would never wash her face. She would just wake up in the morning and put a new layer of makeup on what was already there.
That makes me wonder how much into psychology they maybe looked. I've seen people that never really got out of that child stage of their life.
Yeah.
And so they'll kind of commit to the same thing. Oh, that's part of the reason why you could make an argument. Well, I don't think you make an argument. It's part of the reason why she's the way she is. She's still in that childlike state again. And you really see that at the very end of the movie. So yeah, it would make sense. I never washed the makeup off my face. She didn't. Her mother did. And, because she never did, she just never, and she lived a long time where she sort of had people handing things to her. I say sort of, we do learn in the film that Blanche's character is the one that's really handing things to her. And, she's got clauses in her contract if I do this, you have to give Jane a film as well.
Right.
So you enabled her whole entire life. But that's beside the point, what we're talking about. But she doesn't, Jane's character, she doesn't come out of that state where she has to do anything for anybody other than herself until her sister's in this predicament, and then she's the one taking care of her. This is one of those things that's why don't you just get rid of the person? Because you ask that question, why don't you just kill her? She doesn't want to kill her. It's a symbiotic relationship. They feed off each other. She absolutely never wanted to kill Blanche's character. She wanted her to suffer, but never wanted to kill her. In fact, you see her at the end of the movie, like, she's like, oh, everything's going to be fine. We're going to be okay. You know, she could have left her in certain stages. She could have left her just tied up. But she wanted her to suffer, but she never wanted to kill her because then she wouldn't have that part of her life still.
And you see, I don't know, because there are times I was thinking, like, I don't think Jane actually has the capacity, the way they portrayed her, has the capacity to think past what she's doing in that very moment. And I think she did want to kill. The impression I got is like she did want to kill her sister. And she just didn't think. I mean, she just has no awareness of what that means after she's dead. And there are people who are like that too. So that's what I was thinking. But I mean,
yeah.
But the mutual dependency.
Yeah, it just for me, it's the mutual dependency.
Yeah, it is. And Bette Davis really does knock it out of the park. I mean, Joan Crawford does a good job too.
Yeah.
It's not a thankless role, but it's more of it's kind of like how, Heath Ledger's Joker took over kind of The Dark Knight. His performance is kind of dominated. Everyone else is doing a good job, but Heath Ledger just kind of stole the show, basically. And it's like kind of like that. I feel the same way with Jane as played by Bette Davis in this one. So, yeah.
And they're both wearing crazy makeup.
Yeah, and you could almost say that the Joker, it's like, I wonder if Heath Ledger was thinking a little bit about, baby Jane a bit when he did his messy makeup. And yeah, I could almost see that. It was a bold choice, and she actually had to push back a little bit when people were telling, no, you can't do that with the makeup. And it's like, no, I think this is the right choice. And she convinced everyone around her, too, that it was the right choice. So there's a few things that passed through my mind as I was watching it, too. Certain just things that I won't count as a mark against the film. One of them is, why was there room in the second floor? I think I'd want a first floor room, please, because this second floor thing might not work out with my condition. And even if afterwards, what's that?
Because if she could run around, that would make a lot of things in this movie a lot simpler.
It just feels like it's a decision that was made based on, having to create an obstacle to keep her confined. And
yeah.
I think that could have been done better. And also the buzzer thing, too. Did you notice, like, if your sister is crazy, and she's kind of crazy, right? And she's pressing the buzzer like a mad woman to summon her crazy sister. It's like, this seems a bit like, am I wanting to be tortured right now? Because I am setting the table for that. One way or the other, I'm going to be tortured. So, and she was just jamming that button, It's like, she's starting to annoy me. It's like, what's it going to do to her sister? So there's that. And other, yeah. I know where I'm landing, Ryan, but what about you?
Bad dates.
Bad dates. Okay. Once and done.
Yeah, I think the performances are good. There's more issues I think I have with the movie now that I'm really thinking about it. I forget his character's name, but, and maybe he was set up more as a red herring. The piano player, I thought he came in way too late. He came in way too late in the movie. He didn't really do anything. Like, I thought that could have been a really neat thing for them to kind of explore, maybe actually trying to get a show off the ground. But the show never even came close to getting off the ground. And then his last thing is just like being a drunk and running out of the place because he's like, oh, she's got her sister tied up. That, like I like that dude's story for the extent, but like, I thought maybe he was going to go like down that kind of same path. I was like, hey, there's going to be the guy that she's going to have kill people. Like, I really thought that might happen, but it just, nothing like from there took off the ground. Although it's kickstarted his career, so, good on that guy. And talking about the actor, and also too, I sometimes get mad at characters in movies when they do stupid things. And the lady who was the maid,
oh yeah,
I'm like, okay, here's someone who's clearly in a mental state. Better put my hammer down.
Yeah, that is like otherwise I like her character, but that was a supremely stupid moment. Anna and I were looking at that scene. It's like, she's a smart character. Don't do this to her. She's not dumb enough to put down a weapon, And
one other thing too is like, every time Jane or anybody try to do something, like, and I get it. I get what they were doing, but I'm like, every time they try to do something that was kind of behind Jane's back.
Yeah.
Like, Jane would just show up. And I'm like, oh, come on. Like, that's just too convenient to me. Because like, oh, I'm going to go down. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go get something to eat. And it's like, that kind of stuff takes a long time. You know what I mean? It's like, she just always, Blanche writes a letter, tries to get it out into the world that she's basically being held hostage. Mm-hmm. Jane shows back up. The lady goes and tries to search for Blanche's character. Jane shows back up. And I'm like, it just happened too much for me. I don't hate this movie. I think this movie deserves a watch for the performances. But yeah, for me, it's a bad dates, and we're not doing good with
The
Joan
Joan
Crawford
Crawford films.
movies.
I mean, I have to say, this is my favorite Joan Crawford film, which isn't saying much. Obviously, we've just been talking about. We haven't had good luck so far, but it's like, I don't know if I've had all the problems you had with it. The little things in the middle that drove you nuts didn't quite drive me as much, at least not as much nuts. But I do see myself coming back to it just because I did get enjoyment out of which is the bulk middle part of the film. Anything after they finally get to where you see Betty Davis and Joan Crawford together for the first time, and for that whole section until up to the point where they do the twist ending, the movie pretty much kept me going. So I'll say, yeah, this is in a museum. So yeah, I'll be coming back to it.
Okay.
Anyway, at this time, we'd like to remind our listeners out there that if you're having a good time with Ryan and me dusting off these old movies in search of celluloid treasure, please do like, subscribe, comment, and of course, follow us on your podcast purveyor of choice. Tell us what you think we got wrong, and clue us in on a few titles you'd like us to see cover in future episodes, as long as they are available for free on Tubi, because this adventure comes with no strings attached. And on the subject of the next week's episode, it's a different kind of horror.
Have you seen this movie before?
I have.
I don't know why. I love the name. The name is awesome. Why am I already predicting a nuking of the fridge?
I'm not going to say my thought. I'm not going to tell you my thoughts on this. I don't want to influence your reaction to it.
I love what Tubi says about it. After a deadly car accident, a young church organist, perfect. We got a church girl. Finds herself stalked by mysterious phantoms that beckon her to an abandoned carnival. Oh, I love it. It's Carnival of Souls, a 1962 movie starring Candace Hildegross, Frances Feast or Feist, I might be saying that name wrong, Sidney Berger, and it's directed by Herc Harvey.
I love the name Herc Harvey. That name.
I won't lie. I'm excited.
It got very kind of limited attention when it first came out. It was pretty much a dud on its release, but it kind of got a cult following later on. So
I believe it.
Until next week, Ryan, I guess I'll see you next week. And folks out there, we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye-bye, folks.
But when I'm very bad and answer back and sass, then I'm Mama's little devil. And Papa says I've got the brass.